We're going to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, and we will give you a huge heads up before we get into the spoiler section. So let's get right into this. Now, James Gunn built this as like a new, different kind of Superman, one that we haven't seen before. Isn't that right?
I would say that was in most of the marketing.
Yeah, this is a Superman that is much more accurate to the comics than I think we've seen before. This is a Superman that is all about the values, the themes. This is a movie that is all about Superman as a character rather than the guy with all the powers. You know what I mean?
I think that's one of my biggest things with the movies. I still don't feel like there's enough of the character quite there. I feel like a lot of the emotional bits were a little bit undercut.
I'd say so.
And a little too fast-paced. I wanted to see a little more Clark. I wanted to see a little more of the man behind the cape.
I wanted to see a little more Clark and Lois, honestly.
A little more Clark and Lois especially.
They have surprisingly little time together in this film.
Yeah, their dynamic is very interesting. They get to have a little bit more conflict that I wish we got some more time with.
One thing I would say that if you're going into this looking for some Superman action, this has got it, actually.
Yeah,
some surprisingly
action-filled.
brutal action at times. For such a hopeful, sing-songy type Superman that's all about, truth, justice, all that type of stuff, there's some surprisingly brutal moments in some of these action
This is definitely
scenes.
not a children's movie.
I think children would love this movie, but this is not a movie for children specifically.
Yeah, it doesn't pull its punches with a child audience in mind.
But it is a little campy.
It does have
It is a
some
little
camp.
goofy at times. It's, again, that original 1978 Superman, that Sam Raimi movies come to mind. It's got a little bit of that camp, a little bit of that goofiness.
I can't get over the Green Lantern's haircut and just the character design.
But that's comic accurate, though. That's what he looks like. He actually does have that bowl cut.
It's such a stupid
and it looks
haircut.
just as bad in the comics.
And I've seen one interview that they did a little bit about the costuming and Superman in his little red shorts.
Yes, where David Corenswet talked about how they wanted to include it specifically because it looks goofy.
Yeah, because he is a little goofy.
He likes being goofy, actually. He's kind of he gives real dad vibes, honestly.
A little bit, yeah.
What we're saying is that this Superman is daddy, is what we can,
Oh, no.
we can call him that. I would say, though, in terms of the quality of this film, I think there's some pacing issues. I think it lulls a little bit in the middle where this is not an unpredictable movie. All the pieces get set up and you know where they're going to go, and it takes the movie a little bit too long to get there, I think, which is surprising for a movie that, again, has so little actual Superman and Lois in it. We spend a little bit too long with other people. But that brings us into the broader discussion of the DCEU as a whole, because obviously James Gunn was brought on board specifically to create a DC cinematic universe to rival Marvel. That's explicitly why he was brought on. He's called this Chapter One, Gods and Monsters or something like that. So this movie had a lot of legwork to do. This movie couldn't just be a Superman origin. And I'd say taking that into consideration, if you go into this knowing and understanding that this had to be a lot more than just a regular Superman movie, it genuinely is incredible how competent this is.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it a little bit more when we get to spoilers, but the state of the world when we start the movie is very interesting.
It's weird because it's still an origin story. This is still the story of how, Superman becomes Superman. I don't think that's spoiler to say that's what you're expecting out of a reboot Superman movie. But it's not one, like in 1978, we don't spend the first hour and a half meandering about waiting for Superman to show up. Superman is the first thing you see.
Superman's already here.
Right off the bat, get right into it. And it's both for good and bad, because on one hand, it's great to get right into the action. We've seen his origin story. We've all read the comic. We don't need to do this, right? On the other hand, it's clear that part of the reason that we're starting in the middle here and going at such a pace is because there is so much we have to get through so quickly. And it isn't always successful at doing that.
It almost reminds me of the MCU Spider-Man.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
In that same way of what we lose when we don't do the full origin, but what we also gain by assuming it's common knowledge.
I think that's a really good comparison, Marv. There is something lost, genuinely. There is something lost about not seeing him become Spider-Man. But that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, it's
we
just
gain
different.
more. It's just different. It's just a different decision. And if you're willing to like just sort of put your preconceived notions aside and be like, this is just a different. I do think there's a lot to like here.
I do.
Again, the pacing is
Honestly, my biggest
weird.
issue with it. To be honest, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but I think that like if I were to watch this multiple times, I do think it would drag on a little bit. Especially that middle portion where, again, we know what's going to happen here. This is a Superman movie that specifically expects you to already know what's going to happen because we've skipped the whole origin. So the movie expects that you already have some sort of familiarity, but then it doesn't do anything to surprise you, I guess.
Yeah.
And, honestly, maybe it shouldn't have. This just needed to be good, right? Like if
needed
this
to be
is bad, then we never get any DC superhero movies ever again. Like if this is bad,
we're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
We're not going to see another Superman for another 20 years. It's going to be just like that 2009 Superman Returns, where, I thought it was good, but it just didn't perform well, and it completely killed. Not only
momentum.
Completely killed Superman movies, but completely killed the DCEU before it even got started. And that's why they ended up missing what would become Marvel. I do think the movie is funny.
It is funny.
I'm
It's
sure
got
a lot of
little
people are
jokes.
going to say that it undercuts serious moments with a joke. I don't think it does that. I think it's just paced too quickly. This doesn't feel like a Marvel thing where like serious moments are specifically like scripted to be undercut by jokes. It more feels like the movie is going so blazing fast that there just isn't enough time. There's never a moment where like a serious beat is undercut by someone making a joke. It's usually just we don't have the time, so we move to the next scene, and the next scene happens to be humorous.
Yeah. Like it's never cut off within the same scene and the same circumstances. It's just we don't sit in the silence for long enough. We just move next scene. Okay, we got another point to hit. Let's go.
Got a movie with a lot to do. It's competent.
It is. It's competent. It's got a good setup. Kind of returning to what you were saying about like how we get all the pieces kind of in the beginning. I was surprised to see like most of that trailer footage all takes place within the first half of the movie.
I was very happy to see that. I'm very happy when that happens.
I do too. I really don't like the state we've gotten into where just like trailers just basically show you the last
Basically
scene.
show everything. Now, I would still avoid trailers because there are actually like some crucial end pieces in the trailers, which I don't like.
Yeah.
But a vast majority of the trailers is, just that opening scene.
And that's
almost all
lovely.
of it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's really good. And then we have the people that were shown in the trailer. We've got Green Lantern, played by Nathan Fillion, doing a fantastic job.
God.
We have Mr. Terrific by Eddie Gattegi, I believe, and he does also fantastic. And then we have Hawk Girl, who is played by Isabella Merced, and I kind of forget that she's in this movie, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but when she's there, she's not bad.
When she's there,
just kind of
not bad.
underutilized.
Including, of course, Super Dog, who
Crypto.
is CG the entire time and looks kind of meh, honestly.
Yeah,
he's very cute and well animated, but
it's a little uncanny valley.
it is a little uncanny valley. It's one of those things where the budget was stretched a little thin, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of in his face a little bit.
It is a little bit. He's a little out of focus, it feels. That's the best way to describe it, is that he just feels lower resolution. Does that make sense?
I get where you're coming from.
It kind of feels
I
like,
do.
oh no, we're running out of time. Let's render this at a lower resolution. Just get it out there kind of thing. I would say if you're worried that this is going to be like a too overstuffed movie or that these three side characters are going to take away from it, I would genuinely say no. James Gunn has a lot of experience balancing a lot of different characters. They don't take away from the movie. I could take or leave them, honestly. I think there is a version of this movie where they're not here and it's still good. But I wouldn't say that they make the movie worse. I wouldn't be too worried about their inclusion.
I think you're right about that. They're just kind of here.
They kind of are.
They're just kind of here. They're doing their thing. They add some nice ambiance to the world.
They do.
Especially as we're gonna get into later, just with the general setup of the world.
Well, they solve plot problems is kind of the real reason here. So that's kind of what I mean, where you could remove them and the movie's still fine. They do serve purposes, though. They're not pointless. They're just kind of here. But Lois, played by Rachel Brosnahan, and Superman, played by David Corenswet, are fantastic together for the 5 minutes that we get to see them.
The time we see them, yeah.
I really wish we had more Superman in this Superman movie. But from what we do get to see, They have a great chemistry. They have a great relationship. The visuals, whenever they're around, are great. I genuinely feel for their relationship. You can feel that it feels like two human beings in an actual relationship. Let's put it that way.
Even though Superman is this larger than life character, their conflicts feel grounded.
They're always having two conversations.
They are.
And that's just good writing that comes out throughout. If you, like me, are also concerned about Nicholas Holt's performance as Lex Luthor, I think he did a great job as Lex Luthor. He probably did as best as Nicholas Holt could do as Lex Luthor. I don't think it's miscast. I think it's just a weird cast. He doesn't really come off as threatening in that way. I really wish that he had come off as a little bit more in control or a little bit more dominant, I guess, a little more threatening as a presence. And Nicholas Holt doesn't bring that to his roles, and he never has. So he was cast clearly to not do that. I just would have preferred it, I think.
I think there's a history of less threatening Lexes.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is. If you've seen the original 1978.
Like, he's not necessarily supposed to be...
Mr. Sparker!
Mr. Sparker! Right? Like, I actually didn't mind it, because I think especially when we get to the resolution of that conflict, his characterization actually plays quite well, which I won't get into too much, but...
I think so.
I don't mind it. I don't mind a weaker Lex.
One thing I really love about this Superman, to sort of underscore how kind of goofy he is, the Superman does not curse.
Oh my God, yeah.
Did you notice that?
Crypto?
He says heck.
What the hey?
He says
no, he doesn't
gosh.
even say heck. He says hey.
Hey, he says gosh. He never curses.
The Southern sensibility.
If you haven't seen the movie, you might hear that and think that it's kind of jarring, but you have to kind of notice it. The actor does such a good job of making it seem like how Superman would genuinely actually talk.
He does make it feel very natural, you're right.
There are some surprisingly big questions in this movie.
It does, and I really enjoyed that. A lot of questions that play into the dynamics of this world, like what does
a world with Superman look like?
What does a world with Superman, what are the consequences?
I was really worried that this was going to be the type of movie that gives like hand-wavy answers. Like if you've seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or at the end, Falcon is just like, do better, Senator. And the Senator's like, what do you expect me to do? And he's like, better. And then you as an audience member are just like, well, the world's obviously much more complicated than that. You've just thrown out empty platitudes. This movie does not do that. This is a movie that genuinely understands how complicated the world actually is, and it asks big questions knowing that there's not a right answer. This is not a movie that's going to preach towards you. It's not going to like throw some sort of political ideology in your face. It just asks big questions about what a Superman would look like and gives answers that I think are very faithful to the character.
Yeah, like it doesn't pretend to have all of the answers.
Right.
Because I think at his heart, Superman also doesn't pretend to have all of the answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Superman has always been fallible. And that is part of his humanity, right? Part of being raised as Clark is knowing that he's not going to do everything right all of the time. All he can do is his best.
It's a deeply political movie, as Superman movies tend to be.
I think they have to be.
They have to be. The character itself is political, obviously, because he's a stand-in for American ideals, which is a political idea.
Yeah.
But this movie is deeply political. But I don't think it's political in the way of like left v right type stuff. Like it's not political in sort of like party politics. It's political in that it just asks big questions.
It asks its audience to think.
Yes, it asks very big questions about, what it means to live in a society, what it means to have power, how power should be used. And these are questions that go to the core of Superman. We'll get into it in spoilers. I do have criticisms of the overall theming of this movie, and specifically criticism of some of the political questions that it asks, but it's a movie that isn't afraid to
ask, at least.
Ask. Yeah. And it doesn't ask for dumb reason. It asks because it genuinely wants you as the audience member to sort of think about the answer.
He does give that man of the people vibe rather than the man of the power.
He does. And his performance gives a very good thing. I've seen some discourse online that he's like not as manly or whatever as Henry Cavill, but that's not what Superman ever was. There are a million comic book characters that are big, strong man that can fly. Superman's like physical strength has never been what makes him special. Superman has always been the ideals and the themes behind the character. Again, there are a bajillion strong men who can fly and shoot lasers out of their eyes. Superman has survived this long and is such an icon because he is more than that. And that more than that is the kind of goofy, kind, soft parts of Superman. And whether or not you personally like those parts of him, those are what make him unique. That is what makes the character special to so many people. And this is an actor that is able to portray that a lot more. This is an actor that feels a lot more. His feelings sort of bubble on the surface, where in the past we've seen portrayals of Superman be kind of reserved and protected. This is a Superman who wears his heart on his sleeve, and it's not embarrassing. It's not like, this is kind of cringeworthy. He genuinely just feels like a guy trying to do his best. And he cares very deeply for people. And that shows. The guy saves a squirrel. He goes out of his way to save a single squirrel from being crushed. And you might roll your eyes at that and think that's like cringeworthy or whatever, but I think it's very representative of the Superman that I know from the comics. The Superman that I fell in love with for all of the media that he's in. He has always been the guy who cares.
This Superman is caring almost to a fault. He gets a little wrapped up in his anger at times, in his haste, in his...
He's an emotional guy.
Yeah. And I'm interested to see how he keeps developing and how that rashness and that anger from caring cools itself into someone that's a little more level-headed, who is a little more understanding of the power that he wields and the effect that has.
But I would go so far as to say that, like, if you dislike the more emotional, soft, and kind Superman of this movie, I think you just maybe don't like Superman as a character. Maybe you're more of a Batman kind of guy. Because that is what makes this character special. I have seen some comments, like under the trailers and stuff, about him being too emotional or too kind, too feely, the man of feels, right? But that is what he is. If you want some cold, unmoving, strong man, there are plenty of other heroes for that. But that's not what Superman is. And it's not what Superman was ever intended to be. The character comes from one of the greatest tragedies in human history and comes from a place of wanting there to have been someone who was good and kind and had the power to make things better. Not someone who's all-powerful and also happens to be good. The whole point was a good, kind man who had the power to stop this from happening. And that is what this character is. This is a good, kind man, first and foremost, who just happens to have the power to enact that kindness. All right, but before we get into the spoilers, let's just give our recommendations. Marv, would you recommend this movie?
I would. Especially because with as much money's behind it, I know there's going to be another one. And I'm excited to see it, so you might as well watch this one while it's here. What about you, Lori? Would you recommend this movie?
I think I definitely would. All right, we're going to get into spoilers now, but if you need to click off to go watch the movie, make sure you come back to this video, because YouTube hates that I do this all in one video. They would very much rather, because of watch time metrics, that I put this in 2 separate videos, but I know for the viewer it's much better if it's just one whole video, so do me a favor and make sure you come back and watch the rest of this, all right? All right, let's get into spoilers. So, Superman's parents are evil?
Right? Okay.
I think that's weird. And I think this is one of the weakest parts of the movie. I never got the impression from the movie that his parents were all that big of a deal to him. Like, obviously he likes to listen to the tape. They say it's relaxing or whatever, but I kind of took that to just mean that, like, it's just a nostalgic piece of whatever. I thought it was like very weird when the movie was suddenly pretending that it's, like, core to his identity, this recording. And then I also thought it was weird that apparently the recording that his parents sent him with, they go, "You're great, you're amazing, you're going to do so much good, we love you, you're incredible, kill everyone, enslave the planet.
Sleep with every woman you see."
Yes, sleep with all of the women, kill a bunch of people, enslave the planet. It would be one
dumb.
thing if, like, the first half of the recording kind of hinted that there was a darker second half, but the first half is just the typical, like, you're going to do great things, son, we love you, you're amazing, do good. It is so weird that it seems the parents' actual line was like, do great. We've sent you to the place where you're going to do the best work. You're going to do amazing. Kill all those humans. You're so good at killing people. Form a harem. Weird. But at the same time, I do think it does go a long way in highlighting that his Krypton past doesn't matter.
It doesn't define him.
It's core to the character that it doesn't define him. It's more of an origin story. In fact, if you have read the original comics where Superman comes from, it is a throwaway thing. It has absolutely never mattered to the core of this character that he is from Krypton. It's literally like a gag. It's like a couple sentence write-off just to sort of explain why he has his powers. I would say this is like the fault of the movies that so many people feel that this is such a big part of his character because the movies really blew it up. But in the comics, especially in the original comics, genuinely did not matter. It's just a throwaway. Like it's one or two panels. It has never mattered ever. I do respect the fact that making his parents evil highlights that his origin does not matter. I very much respect what James Gunn was going for in that by having his parents be evil, you as the audience member better understand that the Krypton part of his past was never really core to his character anyway.
The fact, too, that it opens up the conversation point for Pa Kent to be like, your interpretation of the video always mattered more than what it actually said.
Exactly. I think it's really, really dumb that Ultraman was a Superman clone. I genuinely thought that was stupid.
He looks like Brendan Fraser.
Honestly, I would hate to have...
I thought it was Brendan Fraser.
It kind of does look like Brendan Fraser. I kind of hate to have such a positive non-spoiler and then it be so negative in the spoilers. But I think most of my issues with this movie are spoilerific in that, first of all, that clone thing is just stupid. It could have been anything else. Genuinely.
Literally anything else.
There was a second. I'm going to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. There was a genuine second where I thought it was going to be Jimmy Olsen because... He has this plot line of being like magnetic with women and all of this other stuff. God, I thought he was going to take off his mask and it was Jimmy Olsen.
He just like pulls out a camera and...
But no, it was a clone of Superman, which is very dumb.
A lot of the destruction comes from people throwing Superman into things rather than Superman taking fights into different spaces.
I genuinely love how much he goes out of his way to save people and to be good when they're fighting the giant monster and he has to keep like catching it and moving it around so that it doesn't hurt anyone. Absolutely fantastic. I like the lengths that when he gets burned and it burns through the building and instead of fighting the monster, he turns around and goes, "Is everyone okay?" And then he goes, "Hey, buddy, eyes up here," shoots up in the air.
He's got a little quip.
Genuinely fantastic. I really enjoyed how brutal some of the fight scenes were. The fact when Superman grabbed nanobot lady and used her as like a battering ram, just slam on into that guy. That was brutal. I loved that.
The brutality is only in response to combatants that match that intensity.
Yes, and I think this is where like fans of Man of Steel and all of that just don't seem to get that. Where the problem is not that Superman was like violent or even that Superman killed the guy. The problem is just that the circumstances didn't warrant it.
Yeah.
Right? That like the writing was not good enough to justify the actions that Man of Steel made. In this movie, Superman plays dainty at the beginning, but once he knows that these are two people that can take a punch, he's going to punch them.
Yeah.
He punches them really hard.
He punches them very hard. He takes them into space and he knocks them down to the ground.
Yeah, that was genuinely great. The other superheroes are kind of meh, and other than Mr. Terrific, I kind of hate them, if I'm being honest. I get that you're supposed to hate the Green Lantern guy, but I kind of just hate him. I don't think you're supposed to hate Hawkgirl, but I kind of hate her too. I did like Mr. Terrific only because he has one of the coolest action sequences
I've ever seen. James Gunn fight.
He does. He gets the classic James Gunn music fight, and it's genuinely really good, actually.
It is fun.
It turns a little joke character into someone who's kind of formidable and scary. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I was glad to see him out of his chair.
The extended sequence in the Null Zone, that was fine. I could have taken it or leave it. It is where the movie really starts to drag. I thought the part where he brought out that random citizen and killed him in front of Superman, I have very mixed feelings about that. I thought it was very funny when he died in 2 bullets, and Luthor was like, well, I actually expected that would take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got to go get another guy. I'll be back.
I'm going to go get Clark Kent.
It doesn't really fit within the world that they've created. Like, if Lex Luthor had to get the government's permission to arrest Superman, how did he just abduct this random guy and kill him?
Yeah, I mean, he does get the headline at the end, the real hero of Metropolis or something like that.
This movie needed more Superman and Lois.
This movie needed a lot more.
I think the movie's beautiful. I love the scene where they're having the conversation and there's the little like starfish alien thing in the background getting killed. I thought that was great.
What I'd really like to talk about too, though, is for this Justice Gang that we have.
The Justice Gang.
The Justice Gang.
Love the Justice Gang.
Love the Justice Gang.
What a stupid name.
Very interesting that a part of this world, superheroes are funded by private corporations. I'm excited to see how these like private interests will, because they specifically pointed out who they were sponsored by in this script. I'm excited to see how private ownership will influence the role of superheroes in further movies. I want to see them do a little bit more of that because I think that's a very interesting point. Where does the money come from? Where does the power come from? Because we've established that we've had metahumans for what, 300 years?
3 centuries.
Lots of threes going on. I like that they let Material Man into the Justice Gang.
I
It went
love
from
Material
3 to 4.
Man.
I love the little hints of Kansas we see in Clark throughout the thing. I love going back to his parents and the way, like, their little accents and the way she yells at the phone while it's on the table. My favorite was burritos.
I think the Pa Kent scene is very good. It's probably not going to be remembered as one of the best Pa Kent scenes, but
Probably
the
not.
actor gives a very, very good performance. And it's not the actor's fault that this isn't the origin story, so he can't get the classic speech. It has to be sort of adapted, but it is
Yeah.
still the same speech at its core, and I enjoyed it.
And that they didn't really step around it. They were like, okay, this isn't in the original context. Let's just fully adapt it rather than just trying to find synonyms in the thesaurus.
You want to talk about the costumes?
I would love to talk about the costumes. They are fabulous. I love the characterization of everyone in there. I love how we see these just like giant dynamics of Lex's girlfriend compared to him, compared to his like little minions. I love the look of Nano Girl with all of her texture. The textures in the movie are really fun. Even though he's got like the weird bob, the Green Lantern, there's still like layer and dimension to it, which definitely makes it look a little worse, but I like it. I like Mr. Terrific.
The big T on his face.
The big T on his face, the like embroidery he's got on the jacket, in the back, terrific. Just everyone felt very in character.
Maybe Mr. T put himself in the game. Maybe Mr. T made a Night Elf mohawk. No one's going to get that reference.
That's the WoW commercial.
No one's going to get that reference, but I'm going to include it anyway. This is definitely what if Superman had stopped a certain specific conflict in a certain specific region of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, the parallels are
It's not subtle.
quite evident.
It is not subtle.
Quite evident.
It's weird because I have not seen very much discourse. Again, I tried to keep spoiler free as much as possible. But this is definitely a movie that says if Superman were around today, he would not allow a certain thing that's happening in a certain region of the world to be happening, right?
He was made specifically to combat an event like this happening.
Yes.
And he would not let it happen to anyone.
They go out of their way to try and make these not too real nations. But if you know, it's hard not to see it,
Yeah.
right? And I genuinely think that's actually an incredible question to ask in a Superman movie. I think it could have been done better because it kind of just gets sidelined.
Yeah, we don't really have the space for it in this movie, unfortunately.
But if Superman could stop one super advanced military who happens to be backed by the United States as a close ally from killing a whole bunch of people who, whether they're good or not, cannot defend themselves in any meaningful way, would Superman do that? And this movie says not only would he do that, but everyone would hate him for it. The United States specifically would be very upset with him for saving the certain people that this movie is definitely referencing.
Coming back to the only interview that we get with Lois, she specifically brings up how this has affected his public image and how he is getting backlash from so many different angles.
Yeah.
And we see later that, like, yes, part of it is Lex, but I'm sure
Yeah,
that
Lex's literal room full of
Monkey
monkeys
trolls.
writing angry things online. Yeah, James Gunn, I wonder what you're trying to say with that one there.
You know, even though some of them are definitely Lex, there were certainly people we see in the government, we see in some of like the street interviews that it definitely didn't help his public image in a lot of people's eyes.
But this is a movie that also understands how complicated of an issue it is, because the questions that they ask of Superman are the same questions that any particular administration would have to answer if it wanted to take direct action in this specific conflict that it is definitely referencing. Because if we had, say, a president who was willing to do what Superman did and save all of those people, that would be a worldwide controversy for a very long time. And that president is very likely not to be reelected.
Yeah, there is quite a cost to it.
There is a cost to it. And this is a movie that says that Superman... he doesn't care. I love the scene with Lois and Superman because Lois is asking the big political questions, and he does not have answers to them. And it just ends with him yelling, but people were going to die.
And that, at the end of the day, was what mattered.
And that's what mattered. You can come up with all the political reasons that you want for why it's a dicey decision, for why it is uncomfortable and not easy. All Superman saw was that people were going to die. He doesn't care about the geopolitical implications. He's here to save lives. And that's interesting because knowing the origin of Superman, knowing that he is a character born out of specifically wanting there to have been a hero to prevent one of the greatest tragedies in human history, it is very interesting to put him in a situation that parallels modern world in which another version of that tragedy is currently playing out and no one is doing anything.
It drives home that these Superman movies have always been political. We see in Superman Returns being a direct response to our wars in Iraq.
Yeah, Superman Returns is definitely about the Iraq War and just the post 9/11 United States as a whole. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can see in the 1978, this is a Superman still riding the high of winning the Second World War.
Definitely a response to our situation post World War II and into the Cold War.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the reason that we bring this up in the spoiler part of the movie and why we spent so much time talking about it here is that it is genuinely core to the fiber of this film. Because this is a movie that spends a lot of time genuinely on political questions in a way that you wouldn't, if you just turn your brain off and it's a fun Superman movie, you can. In fact, maybe some people listening to this, this is the first time that it's even occurred to them that this was a clear allegory for specific things happening. But the backbone of this movie is the politics of atrocity. One of the key lines that they have at the end, if you remember, is Superman is like, "Why are you doing this to me?" And Lex says, "Because you're bad for us. You're killing us.
You're killing us specifically."
And Lex in this movie specifically represents the military-industrial complex. The core conflict of this movie is that if there were a Superman, then war would no longer be profitable. Lex specifically wants to kill Superman so that wars can continue to happen, so that he can continue to sell weapons.
Right, because he mentions at the end, too, I'm not killing you to stop the war. I created the war to have a reason to kill you.
Yes, because you're bad for us.
Because you're bad for us.
You're killing us. How many people do you think are going to pick up on the fact that this is clearly an allegory for a very specific conflict in a very specific part of the world?
I don't know. That you're really asking me the question of how much do I think the public is media literate today?
What is the media literacy?
What's the media literacy rate?
Audience? I feel like it was kind of hitting you over the head with it, honestly. I felt like it was kind of really obvious that the map was, oh my God, yes. The map that was very, very obviously a very specific region of the world. The fact that all of the villager citizens were all dressed in a stereotypical way that villagers might be represented in Hollywood as dressing in that specific type of the world. The other country is repeatedly said to be like one of the most advanced militaries on the world and a close military ally of the U.S.
You went to help a country who wasn't our ally.
There's literally the line between Lois and Clark where Lois is like, the United States says that they're under a brutal dictatorship and they're all evil or whatever. And Clark is like, you don't believe that. I don't believe that. No one actually believes that. And Lois says, well, yeah, obviously none of us actually believe that, but we don't have proof that they're good. We have people saying that they're bad. We don't have proof that they're good. We can't just assume that. And Superman's like, well, I can. I know that they're good because they're people.
Yeah, I like the dynamic of Clark trusts everyone and sees the good in everyone. And Lois is a reporter and she questions everything and everyone. And the way he brings out a little less cynicism in her.
One of my favorite moments, actually, is Lois standing in his bedroom and realizing that he's just a kid.
Yeah.
Because it's clear, again, I would have loved if the movie took the goddamn time to explore this. But if you read between the lines, it's clear that she is having trouble squaring the Superman and Clark Kent parts, where the whole movie, she is not sure whether Clark Kent or Superman is the real persona. And her walking into that room and seeing all the little posters and the pictures and his trophies,
and his
she
parents.
instantly understands that Clark Kent is the real one, not Superman. And that's when she decides, oh, I do love this man. It was the Clark Kent part that I liked. I just wasn't confident that he was Clark Kent. I was worried that he was Superman and Clark Kent was the persona. But in that moment, she gets to see that Superman is the persona and he's actually Clark Kent. And I think that's great. And I would have loved this movie if any amount of time had been spent on that.
Right. Clark really, really did suffer in this movie, unfortunately.
They both did. But again, that's, it's to an extent not this movie's fault that it also has to start a cinematic universe, because that's just kind of where we are now, right? If you are specifically looking at this movie from the specific reference of understanding that in the current market, this movie always had to be a movie that starts some big cinematic universe, that there was no universe in which any studio would have funded a Superman movie that doesn't start some big thing.
It has to franchise.
I think this is genuinely fantastic, given that specific caveat. As long as you understand that the next Superman movie was always going to be something that was trying to set up some big whatever, this is probably the best we could have gotten out of that. In a vacuum, maybe not my favorite Superman movie, but given where the market is right now, I think it's genuinely amazing.
It's great.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
I'm Marv.
I'm Lori. And you are fantastic.